It's Dan Hardee. We're chatting with Bernard Fowler. He is a backing singer for the Rolling Stones, playing tomorrow night. Very excited to have you here, Bernard.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah. Have you been to the Mile High City before?
Yes, I have.
Very cool. What's your favorite part?
The mountains and the air. It's so sweet.
Do you have trouble with the air up here at all?
You
with
know
altitude?
what? Every other time I have, but for some reason this time it's not affecting me as much. I don't know why that is.
That's good. Well, we brought that in for you, just for you guys.
Thank you very much.
We put more oxygen in the air just for the Stones. That's how excited we are to have you guys. Well, Bernard, tell me first. I like to go all the way back to the beginning to find out how did you get your start in music originally?
Oof, my start in music. I got kicked off the basketball team for singing with the band. So then the first band I ever played with was a school band. I played upright bass, and my first gig was a salsa gig.
Was this high school?
This was junior high school.
Okay.
And then, I went on to do some other things. I had a band in New York City called the New York City Peach Boys, and met a producer by the name of Bill Laswell. He introduced me to Herbie Hancock. I was working with Herbie Hancock, and then he called me and said, come meet Mick Jagger. I met Mick Jagger, and I worked with him on his first solo record. And then a few years later, I worked with the Stones, all the band, on their Steel Wheels record, and I've been rocking and rolling with the Stones ever since.
What was it like the first time you met Mick Jagger?
Shocking. It's funny. I had met him before in a club called the Paradise Garage, but it was very brief. But when I went to meet him in London, I didn't know why I was going. So the producer Bill Laswell he took me to this house, and we walked in a room, and there he was, and I was shocked. I didn't expect to see him. I didn't know what to expect, but I didn't expect to see him, so it was pretty shocking.
Was he cool?
He was cool. He was ice water cool.
That's cool.
Ice water cool, and he was sitting on the floor with a guitar in his hand, and he said, come on down on the floor, and he was strumming, and we started humming, and the next day we were in the studio working on his solo record.
That's amazing. That's very cool.
It was amazing. It was amazing. Great story. I love telling that story.
Well, and then, so you worked with him on his solo record. Mm-hmm. And then tell me about how you ended up becoming part of the whole Stones, all of them.
Well, after the solo record, like I said, a few years, I moved to London. I was singing with a band called Tackhead. And during that time, he called and said, Bernard, the Stones haven't made a record in like 8 or 9 years. I'm in the studio. Why don't you come by and give me a hand on some stuff? So I went to the studio, and we were working on some vocal ideas. And one by one, the Stones started walking in, one by one. And I was like, oh, cool. And then we went into the booth and started singing, me, Ronnie, and Keith. And, I like telling this story too. After we did the singing on the tracks, we went in for the playback. And this is a time when, Mick and Keith weren't, they were having some problems, not seeing eye to eye on some stuff. And it was all in the press, them fighting. So we're listening to the playback, and, I could feel Keith staring at me. And I had never spoke to him. All I did, the only words were just hello when he came into the studio, and he's staring at me, and I'm like, hey, man, is something wrong? And he looks at me with those Keith eyes and says, I didn't want to like you.
Nice.
I'm like, why, man? Because I thought you were one of Mick's boys, but I spoke to Steve Jordan. You're all right.
Wow. So they really were at it that intensely at the time.
At that time, yeah. And thank God those days have passed, and it's really nice to see now. There's love is back in the air.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I have some friends who have seen these guys in other cities, and they just say it's absolutely amazing.
It is amazing. There are people that have seen them during the 60s, the 70s, all the way up until now. And I tell them, you know what? You will never see them as fine as you are now.
That's
as
awesome.
Fine as they are now. They are kicking butt.
And you've been with them since 89? Okay. So over that time, has much changed? Or do you kind of have the same Obviously, they change up the show and, kind of evolve with that stuff. But for the most part, have you guys just pretty much worked together? Like, are you just really cool with these guys by this point?
Yeah, I mean, I always say this. I mean, I've watched their children grow up. And, again, something that has changed is love is back in the air. They're not fighting like they were.
Now, how many of you are there in the band? How many backup singers are there?
There's only 2.
Okay.
There's 2, and then you have, the rest of the band, Chuck Lavelle on keyboards, Darryl Jones on bass, Tim Reese on saxophone, and Carl Denson on saxophone, and Matt Clifford. We have another keyboard player, Matt Clifford, and that's the band.
Have you guys ever had any kind of spats over the 30 years where it was like, no, we're not working with this, or we're not seeing eye to eye on things?
Oh yeah. You can't be around someone 30 years and not have some spats. Yeah, we've had a few.
And you've worked with other artists on songwriting and some other projects, including Ron Wood's with some of his albums. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yes, I produced 2 records for Ronnie Wood. I was doing some stuff with Charlie Watts. I was doing some jazz projects with Charlie Watts, and at the end of some dates we were doing, Ronnie asked me to come to Ireland and do some songwriting with him, and he had to go away for a few days, and when he came back, I had written like 3 or 4 songs, and he said, "Hey man, I guess I don't need a producer, do I?" He said, "Will you do it?" I said, "Absolutely." So that was an amazing time, and like I said, I got to produce 2 records and write songs for Ronnie Wood. I've worked with Keith on one of his solo records. I've done 3 records with Charlie Watts, and I've done a bunch of other stuff. I worked with Public Image Limited with John Lydon on his album called Album. I was his vocal coach, actually, vocal coach and arranger. I've worked with Philip Glass, Herbie Hancock, Duran Duran. Not too long ago, I worked with Alice Cooper on an album called Along Came a Spider, and co-wrote, I think, 1 or 2 songs with him on that record. And something about that record that I want to tell you, there's on that record, and I've read it in press when people talk about there's a duet with Alice Cooper and Ozzy Osbourne on this record, and I just want to set the record straight. That is not a duet with Alice Cooper and Ozzy Osbourne. That is Alice Cooper and Bernard Fowler doing Ozzy Osbourne.
Ah, okay.
And that happened because Alice was having problems getting clearance, for Ozzy to do the duet, and he was really disappointed. So I said, "You know what, Alice, I'll do it for you." And he was like, "Oh no, Bernard, I really wanted Ozzy to do it." And I said, "Well, just wait a minute." So I went into the bathroom, I put some tissue up my nose, came back in and said to the producer, Danny Saber, "Roll." And I started singing this duet, and at the end of it, Alice looked at me and said, "Oh my God, how did you do that?" And he kept it.
Wow.
And people think it's Ozzy, but it's me.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
You channeled your own Ozzy Osbourne through that.
I do, yeah. I've done that for a few people. I've done it, for that project, and I also did it for Ozzy Osbourne for a song on the Beavis and Butthead soundtrack.
Ah, yes.
And I also doubled all of Lemmy's vocals. Lemmy from Motorhead, I doubled all his vocals for the Orgasmatron album.
Wow, that's cool, man. That's some talent. That's awesome. And you have some of your own solo work as well.
Yes. Hardest thing to do in rock and roll is keep a band together. And I've had a few bands that, for one reason or another, didn't stay together. So I was pretty much forced to do solo projects. I did one solo project called Friends with Privileges, and then the next one, which I was really excited about, is called The Burra. And during as I was finishing up The Burra, I was thinking about what I was going to record next, and I wanted to do something really, really different. The new record, it's called Inside Out. It's something really, really different. I took Rolling Stones songs and turned them inside out. Basically, I took the lyrics I took the lyrics, created a totally new backdrop, and I'm reciting the lyrics in spoken word.
Wow. Interesting. What a different take on
It's
that.
very interesting, and it is a very different take. And I think people think that they know, the Rolling Stones songs, but I don't think they really know how deep, Keith Richards and Mick Jagger songwriting team is. There's some real strong lyrical gems in that catalog, and Inside Out features some of those.
Well, and if you take the music away from it, it just stands out that much more and that much more powerful, where there's things you may not have even realized that you heard before.
So powerful. I mean, even when I first started working with the Stones, at that time, my singing partner was Lisa Fisher, and we'd get lyric sheets and we'd read the lyrics, and I'd say, wow, is that what it says? And I'd give it to Lisa. I'm like, Lisa, read that. Did you know that? No, B, I had no idea. So we were constantly being surprised. And, in making this record and going through, Rolling Songbook Volume 1 and Volume 2, I was being surprised, just reading the lyrics for me took on a whole nother vibe. And again, the way that the lyrics are featured on Inside Out, it will definitely give people a different way of hearing and understanding what they're writing.
Very cool, man. That's awesome. And I was going to say, since we've got the show tomorrow night, first of all, do you remember like the moment that you were like, I've made it? Or you were like, I'm a big deal now? Like, was there a particular show or a particular time when you were like, okay, this is big time?
I'm still waiting.
Not quite there yet, huh?
Not quite there yet, but I would probably have to say the highlight of my musical career is probably working with the world's greatest rock and roll band and being accepted by them to work on their different solo projects. That's an honor for me.
Do you do any kind of exercises or things before the show to get ready? Or?
Oh yes, I have my little roll up mat in the dressing room. I hit the floor and do some floor exercises and do some vocal exercises and, sit quiet and try not to be around too many people, try not to shake too many hands. The worst thing for me or Mick, the worst thing that can happen to us is to get sick. So we try to limit our contact. I've gone from, and I got this from Mick, I don't shake too many hands, during shows. I do a lot of fist bumps.
Interesting. I never even thought about that. Yeah, because you guys don't really get sick days.
You don't get sick days, and if you're sick, the show must go on.
Have you ever been so sick that they did have to? Is there like a replacement, or is there a backup?
It's no such thing.
Wow.
There's no such thing. We just support each other.
Well, we have Purell, I think, over there for you in case if you want to do that after you leave. But that's very cool. Well, let's say so you got in town yesterday.
Yes, we got in town yesterday.
So what do you guys do? Do you just hang out at the hotel? Do you go out? I mean...
No, everybody does their thing. Everybody's got something different that they're doing. Some might go shopping. Some might hit the museum. Some might hit the park. Everybody does their thing. We're together all the time. So, when, on the off days, we tend to do our own stuff.
So each city you do try to go out and see the sights and do some things.
Yes, absolutely. And, there was a time where, we didn't have... Time wouldn't allow, us to do a lot. And this go round, we have, a couple days off between shows, so we can get out and, explore the cities a bit. And this is a good one. Weed is legal. People are happy. The air is sweet.
It will be very sweet tomorrow night.
Yes. Denver rocks, baby.
So before I let you go, this was an amazing experience getting a chat with you.
Oh,
this is very cool.
Thank you so much for having me.
I was going to ask you, are there any fun details you'd like to share with us that we may see at the show tomorrow night? Maybe some teasers, perhaps.
You know what? I'd love to tell you, but if I do, I'd have to kill you. Go online. You'll see songs to vote for us to play tomorrow. Put your vote in.
Oh, cool. So
Put your vote in.
You will take votes from fans.
Yes, we will take votes.
That's cool. That's like the first time I think I've ever heard that happening.
Is that right?
Yeah, I've never heard it where they will poll the fans before for what their set list is going to be.
You know, in rehearsal, we go through maybe 100 songs, 125 songs, 150 songs, and the cats, they've got to play the hits. People will. I think a lot of people will feel unfulfilled if they leave a Rolling Stones show without hearing their Brown Sugar or their Satisfaction. So they have to be played. But there's a list of songs that we have gone through for the most part at rehearsal, and when they vote for that song, we give them what they vote for.
That's awesome, man. Very cool. Well,
it is awesome.
I'll tell you what, we are really looking forward to this tomorrow night. We actually went all Stones this morning at 9 a.m., and I'm actually going to be spinning them pretty much nonstop until you guys take the stage tomorrow night.
Very cool. So very cool.
We're very excited you were able to stop by today, and this was a treat, man. I really do appreciate it.
Treat for me too. Thank you so much for having me, and go get Inside Out. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised.